It's the 3rd of May, 2025. Coming up on today's Global Intelligence Agency Operations Report. What is a timeline reboot? How does it affect humanity? Here's a hint. Reboots are responsible for the Mandela effect. It's happened at least once every 7 years for the last 200 years, but not this time. And the deep state is on the hunt looking for something that will allow them to control space and time. They are not having any luck, but there have been many disturbances. And more on how astrology really affects your life and why. Well, it's the 3rd of May. It feels like forever since I've done a GIA report, and I apologize for that. It's been a little bit of a rocky and crazy week. Hopefully next week will be better, but based on what we're seeing right now, it's going to be a little bit of a turbulent one. So let's get into it. We got a lot to cover tonight. There's going to be a lot of interesting things that you're going to learn. And I know I've learned a lot this week based on, some interesting events. So let's talk about regular news first and, kind of lighten things up a little bit. So on the official White House Twitter page, we have President Trump has the Pope. Apparently, he would really like to be the Pope. There's actually even an interview where they ask him who would he prefer to be the Pope, and he said himself he would like to be the Pope. So, what are they up to over there? Or they're just crazy as usual. So in other regular news, an institution, there was some questions during the question and answer about proof of, the Fed numbers keep going up, and how is that if they don't have any money or the ability to issue any money? So we need proof, and we need proof that everybody is going broke and, that kind of thing. So here it is for you. The United Nations actually announced, and this is an article from a magazine or an online website, I should say, called The Economist, where it basically states that the United Nations is running out of money, and they say that'll happen within a few months. Well, that's been happening for quite a while now. The UN has been running out of money and has run out of money several times. They are scraping the bottom of the barrel, trying to get people or countries to pay back UN loans, IMF loans, World Bank loans, and, they're not having a whole lot of luck at this moment in time. Countries are all broke, everybody is broke, and they're all waiting for an alignment with Uranus to make that better. So as far as Trump is concerned, well, apparently they don't care much about conclaves and all that kind of stuff, but conclave does start this week, and it starts officially on Wednesday. There is a reason why I believe that they have put it off until Wednesday of next week, because they are expecting amazing things to happen for them. Well, and we're expecting things to happen over the weekend, which did not. So now on to, I guess you would say, what's really going on in the world, not just what they're trying to tell us. So earlier this week, it was a few days ago, probably on Wednesday of this week, Tom, and Tom Melville. Tom Melville gives me a call and tells me they are desperately inviting him to come into Manhattan. They wouldn't tell him what it is about, and I'm pretty sure I know what it was about. But they gave him some indication that they would really like for him to come. They'll send him a limo and all of these types of things to get him to come into Manhattan. For those of you that don't know, Tom doesn't live in Manhattan. He lives outside in the state of New York. We'll just leave it at that for the purpose of this report. So I gave some stipulations if he was going to do that. You see, Tom works a regular, well, I wouldn't call it a regular job. He has his own business and he makes money, for every day that he works. And as those of you that own your own business know, if you don't work, you don't make money. And so Tom needs to do that. So my stipulations for him going into Manhattan were as follows. Number one, they would need to give him, once this limousine arrives, $2,000 for him to even get into the limo. There is a couple of people that would need to go with him, and they would need to be paid a minimum amount from that $2,000 for the day, one to get in the vehicle with him and one to follow him in. I don't trust these people as far as I can throw them, especially with what I believe they had planned. Next, once he arrived, because this meeting was supposed to be with the Federal Reserve, once he arrived, we would pull $10 million into the system, which I have no problem putting money into the Fed or any of those institutions. I just don't do it anymore. It's not a can I, it's a will I. And so out of that 10 million, 3 million would go to Tom and his two associates. And then, and only then, would we make arrangements for them to come here and sit down and have a conversation on the part that they would play in what is happening now. You know, they can try to deny that these things are happening, but they are actually happening. So those were the stipulations that I gave. And he was supposed to go into Manhattan on Thursday of this week. But alas, he got a call from Langley, and Langley told him that they have to make all these arrangements and make sure that their own people are in where they're supposed to be in these varying banks, and they'll set it all up and all this kind of stuff. Well, by set it all up, I'm pretty sure they meant we will try to get access to the Golden Age AI or any other system that she uses to transfer while you're there, and so we will need to set this up. Secondly, there have been other plans dictated by the secret space program for Langley for this weekend. Therefore, they're all a little bit busy. And busy they have been. God bless them. So I expect come Monday, which is the promised day that this will happen, will actually be moved probably until next Monday. And there's a good reason why I say this, and this relates to the rest of the news report. It's going to be very complicated, and there's going to be a lot of moving parts here. And what I'm going to give you is basically the 10,000-foot view of what has happened and what everybody is hoping will happen and why. So we know on the 12th of April, there is a council meeting. That is a universal council meeting, has nothing to do with the deep state. They were not invited, as you know, and we talked about this. And at that point in time, there was more of a review on humanity as a whole, where we're going, and are we capable of living currently in a golden age? And as a majority, if you take humanity as a whole, we are all basically waiting for something positive to happen. That has been ascertained, number one. Number two, they believe that there are enough people awake and aware of what is happening on this planet to effectuate change, albeit some of them believe that change is going to come through the deep state or orange people, orange men. But that is not exactly how the change is going to take place. And quite frankly, people don't actually care. There are a lot of people that follow them mainly because of the promises that they've made to everyone, saying Nasara Jassara is coming. You know, it's been coming for 25 years now, and and no one's made a move to do anything, and they believe this is their guy. And it's someone they can see on TV, and because of the position that person holds, they believe that this is a credible source of information. However, bottom line is, when the council had done their review of humanity, they had looked at what people really, truly want. It's not hard when you have a lot of, let's just say, special equipment, for them to actually look at people and figure out what telepathically they are desiring and what it is they want to do. And as a whole, humanity would just like a positive change in this world. And quite frankly, if it doesn't come from orange people, that is okay, as long as it comes and it happens. And they would flip sides from paying attention to presidents and heads of state in a heartbeat if this were to take place. And there were a certain amount of events, and everybody's version of what they thought change would be was a little bit different. But there were some key factors that came into play as it relates to change. You know, some are more awake and aware than others. They would like to have an encounter with non-humans. Other people want to have a better work life, a better earth, and meaning less pollution. They would like to have better food choices and food sources, and they would like to be able to not struggle if their family needs medical care and all of these types of things. So, you know, there were some definite key factors. They'd like to see cures for disease. That's another thing that came up. They would like to see cures for cancer and all of these types of things. Now, if we know it on our side of things, I am sure, not even guessing here, to some degree, the deep state also knows people's desires. There has been technology for years. It's currently utilized within intelligence agencies where essentially they can read brain waves to know whether or not you're telling the truth. This is the newer version of lie detector tests. They don't do it like they do in the movies anymore. They also are aware of how people think, what they think when they're watching speeches and reading news reports and watching YouTube and those types of things, because they do have access to that type of technology. So oftentimes what you see the Q crew, et al., spit out is actually what people desire. It's not hard to read. They feed you a bunch of stuff so that you will glorify the stuff. And I say stuff, you know what kind of word I'm using in my head, right? So, little 4-letter word. But they feed you the stuff so that you will follow them. And for lack of a better term, even for some people, they worship them, knowingly or unknowingly, through orange people or otherwise. This also comes and is utilized in religions and with religious leaders, not only the Pope, but also other major religious leaders in the world. What do people want to hear, and what do they need to hear right now? And this makes certain religions, including Islam and others, very popular amongst people. So this technology can also be utilized by our side to determine readiness to move forward into a non-holographic reality, so to speak. Are we ready to move into sovereignty and reality? It's going to take a lot of work, and we all know that. You know, if you're watching this, probably not as much, but for most people, you know, the average everyday normies, as we call them, they are going to need some time and some work to really truly understand how to live in a different way. It's going to be very confusing for them. We know this, and we figure we have a plan that will work. Within 7 to 10 years, we will see people change. Now, that doesn't mean we're going to have to wait 7 to 10 years to move forward, thank God, but it's going to take 7 to 10 years of that forward movement to get people to settle in and understand something new. And this is going to be something really new to humanity. We've talked about things like systems and work schedules and employment and how money moves and how money is earned and you know, opportunities for education and what kind of education do we need to have, because right now our educational systems pretty much in every country are terrible. So we've talked a lot about that, and a lot of those concepts and different ideas will be presented through our New Earth series that we have coming up in the future. So you are familiar with New Earth a little bit. We used to have little excerpts that existed in the news, and we felt that wasn't enough. So we expanded on this series and have come up with some pretty amazing topics and have talked to a lot of pretty amazing people. And we have got a few episodes all ready to go, and we should be launching that in the very near future. But you're going to learn a lot about concepts and different ways of doing things, not only from us, but also from people that we've found that are just amazing people who are doing it. So this is going to be great. But we talked a lot about these things with the council too. Now, part of the reason why we discuss these things is because we have had in the past what we call a timeline reboot. We have also had a timeline jump, and we have had times where timelines were extended in the past based on our former leaders, as like Marduk and others like that, who suggested that this would be a really good idea. So timeline jumping and rebooting is not as easy as it seems as it relates to Earth and humans. We have a lot of you questioning things based on the fact that jumping timelines or rebooting timelines isn't necessarily foolproof based on manipulation that has happened in the past from AI systems and AI systems that have been driven by those, and mostly dark folks, that did not want humanity to learn and to grow. Some of the examples that you personally probably have witnessed are things like the Mandela effect. One moment our books say, X, Y, and Z, and the next moment they don't. We have television personalities that have, we know used to dress like this or say certain things, and they're not like that in this current timeline or now all of a sudden. We remember events from history, and that's not how we remember them. And if we remember them differently, we're often told that we're crazy. Or, they give you a little zap to the brain or a scrubbing of the internet, and then you can never prove that what you think to be correct is actually correct. For those of you that study the way that nature works and seasons and how seasons work, that might even be a little bit different for you. So we've noticed a lot of inconsistencies throughout our history, especially after the last reboot. Now, the reason why we notice those inconsistencies is because even as recent as 2018, the last time the reboot, so to speak, happened, we've noticed a lot more. Humanity has woken up a lot more. Even before 2018, the last reboot before that was in the early 2000s, so about 2003 or so, 2002. And sometimes the deep state is aware that these things happen, and sometimes they are not aware that these things happen because nobody on that level of global governance gave a rat's booty less about the deep state and what they want and what they don't want. I know the council certainly could care less, but there are certain things that the council felt back at that time that were becoming available in the near future. Therefore, if they could just hold humanity off for a short period of time, they felt that there would be upcoming events based on their calculations, and there are many things that come into play with their calculations, not just humans, where we would have a perfect opportunity after 2018 to change time in totality. And if you look back and you listen to some of the old reports, whether that was Life Force reports or World Situation reports or Global Intelligence Agency reports, and even reports that others are making on YouTube and in other places as it relates to changes that are taking place, you will see that much has happened since 2018. Many events have come to pass. The council has oftentimes helped with that. we also have the enforcer here, and we have others that have helped humanity to grow and learn and wake up. And waking up humanity actually is. Even, your former naysaying normie friends are starting to ask questions. And that is because we are in a changing time and your mind is becoming your own. And we don't have as much manipulation as far as our mind, body, and soul are concerned. So that will happen a lot more frequently in the near future. But let's talk about what happens when a timeline is moved or rebooted. So in the past, let's take, for example, in 1996. 1996 was another time of an actual timeline move, so to speak, meaning we moved from a dark timeline to a neutral timeline at that time. We were literally on the verge of moving to a light timeline when this whole rebooting process took place, which would have given humanity a lot more sovereignty, and we could have changed more systems unto ourselves if we were not jumping timelines all the time. Because a few other things take place during a timeline change. So in 1996, it was a full timeline change. We actually moved from one trajectory to another trajectory. Now, this event in 1996 was triggered by an AI-generated quote-unquote alien invasion. And I know when I say that to you, and all of you were most likely alive in 1996, you'll say, hey, Kim, you're crazy. There's been no alien invasion. Now, whether it happened on the physical plane or on the causal plane or on the etherical level, it doesn't really matter to the system that used to trigger things that would mandate a timeline jump. So in 1996, pretty much all of humanity had a interesting experience. So first thing that takes place when a timeline jump happens is the records of Earth are uploaded into an AI holographic simulation we call a timeline. The information that is uploaded is related to what does the world look like? What buildings are in place? What buildings were torn down? What land existed? What land didn't exist? What events took place in our history that people will actually have a memory of? That type of thing. And I'll explain here in a few moments how that is done. But all the information is uploaded into an AI system, and a simulation is created based on not at that time, we had less humans, but based on billions of humans that walk the planet and all of our alleged technological innovations. At the time, when we were on the verge of moving into a system with more freedom, humans are also modified, meaning we live shorter lifespans as a whole, not in general, but in general, as I should say, we live shorter lifespans. Our brain capacities are reduced back to 10 to 15% on average. Our strength is weakened. Programs are developed for our harm, such as food sources, other things that we rely on to stay alive. Medical care is also changed, and typically at the end of the download, so to speak, of information, other information comes out to our former world government folks. And in order to carry out those suggestions to hold humanity back, so to speak, there is often money that comes along with those things, and orders and instructions for the next 7 years. We've talked about the 7-year cycles before. Those orders and instructions came in part from the council, So we have orders and instructions from the light side, and we have orders and instructions that would come from the dark side because we moved into a neutral time line, so to speak. And those orders that come out are often subject to our then world government or world leaders, which were not human. And I know that's very disappointing to our deep state friends at the SSP and elsewhere, but you were not included. Then those folks would then have a meeting and they would determine on what they could do to kind of live in the gray. You know, they never like to do positive things to humanity, and they need to hold us back as much as possible because let's face it, we make great cattle. You know, if the cattle were allowed to roam free and eat what they want and do what they want and procreate when they wanted and all of those types of things, you know, hey, they're not controllable now, are they? And they wouldn't be giving the milk we call loosh. So it was very important for them to hold us back at that time. So the fake AI created alien invasion allowed for that to happen. Another time that happened was in 2018, but this time it was not a jumping of timelines. This time it was an extension of a timeline, for lack of a better term. During an extension of a timeline, your memories may be altered. Your abilities would again be knocked back down to an acceptable level, at least to them. And this was also based on an AI-generated simulation that scares the heck out of people. There was also, 2018 was a pivotal year. In 2018, the line of Solomon's contracts expired. The covenant with the line of Solomon also expired. Many other covenants with Marduk expired. And the world was going to be our oyster in 2018. This was supposed to occur and begin between the 2nd to the 7th of December 2018. We would have then been free from the world government at that point in time. And quite frankly, those people, let's just call them, whined, moaned, and complained to the council on why humanity is not ready, and they must continue to stay in charge for a short period of time longer. At the time, we still had some others that were here, and apparently everybody concurred that this was a good idea. Now, yeah, you know, I don't know if all of humanity would have concurred, but there were some pluses and some minuses to that. There were a lot of awakenings that happened since that time, though, and we were due this within the last couple of weeks to actually have another timeline reboot. So this was part of the council meeting. Do they extend the timeline? Do they help us not extend the timeline? You know, these were all the questions that were on the table. And we finally came up after much research and analysis on their part and on ours, you know, pleading our case. Because remember, I'm an ambassador to this council and have been since 2016. There would be no extension. This is what all parties agreed upon, including, of course, Source. We would be moving forward into a time of no time, which is going to take, quote unquote, time. We would be moving forward into a golden age. We have been moving forward into a golden age, and humanity has grown to the point, except for the deep state, because they go backwards. They are mentally challenged on every level, humans. But the rest of us have actually decided to move forward. We have shown enough initiative that we will, believe it or not, it doesn't seem like that way to you, but we have shown enough initiative to care and love humanity as humans as a whole more than we love governments. We are also far enough along where we are not expecting a savior in our governments, the deep state or otherwise, and we are beginning to question our leadership very heavily, whether we verbalize that and or not. Uh, we have also proven, let's just say, beyond a shadow of a doubt, that the time of the deep state and their way is over. It's over in a lot of ways because even if the council were to say humans need evil in order to find the good, because those statements have been made in the past by, let's just say, people that used to run this rock we live on, humans have come too far. We, on our side of it, are more innovative. We're more creative. We are more able to adapt, change, overcome, and strategize against our enemies more than you know. What the news reports is often incorrect. And I know that's a total shock to all of you, but it's true. So on the other side, they no longer have their fearless leaders, meaning the non-humans that drove them to do all of the things that they do on the daily. They have proven themselves to be ineffective dark leaders. No surprise there, no shock there. They have proven themselves unable and unwilling to change and live in a different way. They have proven themselves to be driving not only themselves and their governments and their systems off a cliff. They have made poor decisions. They have been out-strategized every single step of the way. Therefore, they cannot control humanity anymore. Now, that led us to another question is, does humanity need to be controlled? Well, we need to maintain new systems that are for humanity's benefit to help us to learn and grow as a whole. And what I mean by that is it's kind of the same way, and please, I'm not saying that all grown adults are children, so don't take that the wrong way, but it's kind of the same way that we love and care for our children and our grandchildren, and we help them to grow and learn how to take care of themselves, how to take care of their own families at some point in the future, how to cook, how to clean, how to do all the things they need to do in life. And we do that with love and compassion, at least most of us do. And we need to do the same thing as people who are awake and aware. We need to create systems for people to live in and to thrive in. And we have given them our ideas and our thoughts on how to do that, or shared amongst each other. And the thing about a council, it's not a, there are times where the council does serve as a court for disputes between species or planets, or, even lower astral versus the upper astral. They do. But for the most part, we understand that everything that happens here on Earth currently happens everywhere else. The reverb throughout the multiverse and the omniverse is incredible. We also understand the reverb that the deep state puts out and how it's affecting other systems throughout the multiverse. And we, as a whole, that means hundreds of billions of trillions of quadrillions of species and beings throughout the multiverse have concurred that our deep state stinks. They're smelly, they're making smelly reverbs throughout the universe, and they need to go. They're not even giving proper leadership to the dark and evil things they try to do. They are not good proxies even for the dark side, even if they were to consider there to be a dark side. At this moment in time, there isn't anyone left on that side, except for some ridiculous humans walking this planet that can barely tie their shoes. I'm sure we should expect the manufacturing in the U.S., because that's the only place we're going to manufacture now, apparently, to start making Velcro shoes again in order to help the deep state out, because they do need them. But back to timelines and jumps and reboots. So now you kind of understand where your Mandela effects come in, where you remember certain things taking place and other people don't. I'm sure there have been times in your life where even friends and family, there's a discussion about different events. And for the most part, you might look at them like that never happened. I know it didn't happen. Then you start searching the internet and you start looking for the information, or you go to a library where it's in hard copy in a book. And that's where you usually find the screw ups, because they don't necessarily reprint every book and they forget, number one. Number two, we are going to talk a little bit more. I think I've mentioned this before. So much has happened this week. It feels like it's been a year since the last time I did a report about what's called the crown of glory. And the crown of glory is something that resides in the center of Earth, in Earth's core. The crown of glory was originally there from the beginning, meaning from the beginning in the creation of Earth as a keystone planet. And it serves as a bit of a record keeper for Earth's history and events. The crown of glory is very interesting. I'm going to draw some pictures for you here so you can get a general idea. I'll get the whiteboard up here in a second. But the crown of glory had been very distorted. So when reboots happen, the dark side that had tried to recreate their own quote unquote crown of glory, as we call it, this is what we refer to it as, and rewrite history, so to speak, so that they could continue simulations, or what we call timelines. They really did a number on those stones. Now, this is real relative to what the deep state has been up to as well. And, they love to think they know how all space junk works. They love to think that they know how things were created and what they need to do to just take over something someone else left for them. And the Glory Stones is not something that is space junk that was left by just anyone. They were left by Source. So let's talk a little bit about the crown of glory, because it's relative to the rest of this. So here we have Earth. This is not 3D. The Earth is not flat. It is round, still round, will always be round. Ballistics, it's got to be round. Okay, so you have Earth's core, and then you have the point of creation within Earth. And the point of creation is made when the torus, everything kind of passes through that center of Earth, and it creates what's called a vortex. And this is the way it has gone for some time. You notice there's clockwise and there's counterclockwise motions, but I'm just going for that point. So for a long time, Earth's point of creation stopped being Earth's point of creation. It became what's called a 0 point. Now, a 0 point would then have connected to another main 0 point in the universe. We now know, as of last report, we now know as a cosmic central sun, which is an artificial central sun and not related to a source central sun. A point of creation always connects to the point of creation within Source. A cosmic central sun, and many of them, infinite numbers of cosmic central suns, create false points of creation by infecting the point of creation within Source, and then on down to all of Source's creations. Now, Earth, as being a keystone and having an overlay on its central point, its point of all creation, created a cosmic central sun, also known as a 0 point or 0 point energy. Tesla talked about that a lot of times. in order to effectuate change on this planet, we had to reverse that out. But let's draw another quick picture here. Okay, back to Earth. So now we know how the point of creation in Earth is created. Removing of central suns and other things that would feed off Earth was very important. So now we have Earth's core. So around Earth's core are 13 rather large stones. You could say they are almost in a crown-like formation. So they go pretty much around the entire center of Earth, and there are 13 of them. 13 stones and a crown of glory. Now, originally, these stones are called living stones. You can even call them celestial stones, so to speak. And these celestial stones would record everything that happened in Earth's point of creation before it actually came into reality. So as creation was happening from a central nexus planet called Earth, these stones would read the language of source, because this is basically a piece of source, just like it is in your soul, right from the soul of Earth. The information would then come out into what we call the crown of glory, living stones, or living crystals, as some call them. And they would record the history of creation 100%. Now, they were originally all gold, but they still bear a soul which cannot be tainted and is still connected to source, just like yours is. But over the years, in the many wars that happened on Earth, they were very coveted. You see, because the information that is in those stones is all about creation. And in order to create what eventually happened to Earth, artificial timelines and simulations, they had to take control over these stones. And they look kind of interesting. I mean, they're sort of look like this. They're a little bit imperfect, so to speak. But they look kind of like this. So inside here is a soul because it's a living crystal. But within here, within each crystal, is something called life force, which is basically source blood, for lack of a better term. It's also your life force is your lifeblood. It is what flows through your entire body, through every plane of your existence and every density of your existence, because humans were used in a lot of different ways. But it flows through pretty much all organic life. So originally, that life force, because it is of source, was golden. And then these records, of course, would then transmit information throughout the multiverse if changes were going to be made, if a new galaxy was going to be created, when it was created, how it was created, what species would live there. Everyone's records in the universe are collected here. You could even say that the Hall of Records has a connection to the living stones and the living crystals. In part, meaning the Hall of Records recognizes changes made by source, covenants made by source, information, should it be necessary. We have halls of records and we have halls of science. And this is the real living records and living DNA, RNA, and GNA of the multiverse. So what happened to our poor little stones? Well, let's talk about that for a second there. Okay. So our stones, we know, look like this. and there are 13 of them. So we have 13 living stones or crystals. It's not really crystal as we know it. It's something different. And these are the recorders. I know that there's someone on the internet there that calls them the living records. And they're right. You know, that part's right. So we have 13 of these stones. So the first thing they had to do was remove the life force from the stone itself and replace it with artificial, synthetic, AI generated life force. So they wanted the power, so to speak, that was going to these crystals to be theirs. This is where we ended up with for quite a long time. Now, remember, they can't taint a soul. So the soul of the crystal always belongs to source. However, they could manipulate, just like they did with humans, everything around the soul in order to effectuate the changes that they wanted to effectuate, and quite frankly, to distort and delay creation, if not try, and they did try, to change all of creation. Okay, so these living crystals had unfortunately become something different. So, of the 13 crystals, we had artificial simulations created. They were also connected to 13 locations on the planet. And this has nothing to do with 13 members of the Illuminati, because on this level, no one cares about the humans, even the deep, dark humans. Nobody gives a flying hoot. So, crystals were distorted and became different colors. So we have what was considered to be the most powerful three, and that would be your black gold, your light gold, so to speak, and your neutral gold. Now, this is what we call fool's gold. I'm going to use that term because it's going to come up later. Fool's gold. It's not the human sense of fool's gold, but we would call it synthetic black gold because it wasn't even of anti-source, synthetic light gold because it wasn't of source, and synthetic neutral gold, which then created neutral source. So those are the three main colors. And then we also have black and white and gray or silver. And we also have, let's see, purple. And we have blue and red and orange and yellow and amber. Oops, green. Can't forget green. And amber. So these all went to disturb and then create what we call artificial planes of existence. There are also subsections that were artificial and densities that were artificial. We have come to know as halls of the mente. This also created artificial halls of records and artificial living records and all kinds of things. And the overlays were not only put within the crystals, but they were also put outside the crystals, utilizing You guessed it, sophons, or artificial photons, which then were connected to many things throughout the universe. So living crystals now have artificial life force powering them, much like they tried to do with humans. Can they keep the soul alive, keep it connected to source? Is that the greatest intel in the world, where you can now know what source is going to think before it actually happens, so you can distort that bit of creation? Absolutely. There was a lot of problems with that. We also had problems with the sister crystals that were located inside source as well. So now that we know what a crown of glory stone is, we need to learn a few more things when it comes to jumping timelines and jumping time loops. Now, these living crystals will play a part in that. They're also going to play a part in the point when I get into this report to explain how astrology really works. So this week, the deep state was desperately looking for, because the 13 cities, it's actually 11 cities because 3 of them are all the same one, cities on Earth that were connected to the living crystals. They felt could be reached by a particular type of device that was created to manage time and timelines and the simulations we've had on Earth. So they felt that if they could connect these particular devices, and we're going to talk a little bit about that right now, to these cities at specific days and times after the alleged council meeting, that they would be able to reboot the timeline. You see, this year, as I have said, the timeline was due to be destroyed, created, moved, changed, rebooted. Something had to happen. There had to be a decision made this year. And that decision was to be made no later than, I would say before the 18th, before April 18th. Oops. Now, because the deep state didn't get any information, they thought they were going to go ahead and reboot the timeline all by themselves. So the device that they were looking for, because, again, little knowledge is dangerous, and these people aren't the sharpest tools in the shed and don't have any discernment or intuition at all, nor do they care anymore because they're angry with the council because they weren't invited and no one showed up to help them and give them instructions, even though they've personally self-declared themselves in charge. Lovely folk. Events began to happen. Coincidentally, this coordinates kind of with Passover and a few other events that humans celebrate. But this year was very different and very interesting. So the device we're referring to is something called a Fortran. And a Fortran comes both in, let's call it false gold, and it also comes in black gold. Remember, this is an artificial simulation being created by humans, non-humans, I should say. And therefore, since it is artificial and not of source, there is no source involved in timelines and timeline creations and anything other than crystalline time. So in Israel, underneath the Tower of David, was all 3, and we also have neutral, Fortran boxes. So it sat underneath this particular area in a citadel in the following pattern. Because we were in a neutral timeline, the dark box, or the dark Fortran, and these things are probably the size of, let's see, maybe a hat box. They're not very big. So inside here is where the dark box was. Outside here became the neutral box. And sitting on top was the false gold box. So this is location number 1. So location number 1, where these boxes lay, that determined the simulation and if there was going to be a flip in a timeline, was under the Tower of David. Now, let's talk about Fortran boxes. Now, in the universe, each dark, light, and neutral has 5 boxes. So for a total of 15. Now, these boxes were not on Earth, never have been on Earth, and never been in the hands of humans, and never utilized by humans. And this is just another ridiculous operation that the deep state thought that they could run, because they got a little bit of information and they run around like hooligans on their first day after mommy and daddy go on vacation. And I'm sorry I'm being so rude, but I've had to deal with this for the last 5 days, and I'm not very happy about it. And sleep eludes me. Thank God for coffee. I can tell you that. Which I have right here, by the way. Okay, so 5 different boxes, dark, light, and neutral. Now, some of these councils where these boxes resided would be the Universal or Omniversal Council of 9. As an example, that particular council held a dark, light, and neutral box. The Universal Council also had all 3 boxes. There were other beings in other councils, both dark and light, that would hold boxes, some dark, some light, some neutral, some all 3. It just depends. So there are many different groups other than the ones that existed on Earth that had boxes. Now, in order to trip a timeline, reboot a timeline, change to a different timeline in the simulation, or we were to completely come out of a timeline, the people or the beings that were in charge of said boxes, which is not the deep state, by the way. Sorry, guys. Sorry, SSP that have been running around with these boxes for a while. It is not you. And you realized that under Manhattan, didn't you? We'll get there in a minute. So it is not the deep state that is actually in charge of the boxes, because none of the other box holders recognize them as being in charge of anything. Whether they self-declare it or not, no one else agrees, including Source. Not even Dark Source agrees, actually, or did agree at any point in time, as much as they'd like to think so. So, what did they do recently? So this is location number 1. This location here, and this is where we're going to start talking about astrology in just a few minutes, so it's important to know. We're connected to the sun. So your black gold, your false black gold, your false neutral gold, and your false gold were connected to the sun. Now, in astrology, the sun has many different meanings, and it depends on who you talk to, but it is one of the pivotal parts of astrology. So it's important to understand that false, dark, false, neutral, but gold all the way, nonetheless, kind of dictates a little bit of what happens in your life. Now, coming from these boxes, they were surrounded by a sophon, or a synthetic photon. And they were connected directly to the sun, so 3 times. So technically, anything as it relates to your soul control was related to, meaning your overlays on your soul, all of the things that they have done to try to prevent us from connecting our mind, body, and our soul together, were dictated by the sun and the sun's overlays. We call sophons, connected directly to Israel and the Tower of David. Okay, so that's location number 1. Let's talk about location number 2. This is going to make a whole lot of sense to you. Location number 2 on Earth was the Vatican. Total shocker, I know. And guess what color or false color of the Crown of Glory stone was located, connected to the Vatican? That would be black. Also a total shocker to you guys, I know. Quickly, I wanted to make a point of telling you that the sequence that the deep state was hoping to utilize and to tap into or hack into these boxes or utilize these boxes to trigger the beginning of the sequence connected to the crown of glory begin on the 18th of April. We also know as the day that allegedly the Christ died, right? That's also known as Good Friday. Why we call it good, I have no idea. And they remained, those boxes remained in those spots, hoping for an activation on the 18th, 19th, and 20th, till allegedly the Christ was going to rise. So on the 21st, they took the box off the top. Now you need all 3 boxes, guys, and you actually need the rest of the 15 of the boxes, but they don't care about anyone else. They think they know everything. Everything. They're like unruly teenagers. For those of you that have raised kids, you know exactly what I mean. Certain age comes around and they know everything until they don't. So the same goes for the deep state. So black was formerly under the Vatican. The Vatican was also connected to our planet Saturn. Saturn is, depending on who you talk to in astrology, controls time. Whoops, there we go, controls time. It also is the taskmaster, depending on who you talk to, making things difficult. So we can honestly say and look at each other, and when we know the real story behind the Vatican and not pointy hat people and other people, that we know that Saturn being connected to facilities underneath the Vatican could definitely make life very difficult. And difficult, they did make our life, didn't they? Now, it's no wonder why Trump is putting out there he'd like to be the Pope. I don't know if he'd like to be the Pope in a pointy hat and a white jacket and all that other crap, but he'd definitely like to be in control of black. See, because black is also connected to things like Web 9, or at least it used to be, the mainframe of the beast as we knew it before. And they're hoping if there's a timeline reboot, you see, that all these things will come flooding back, now that they have gotten more information from me about them, and then they've now learned more information about what these things do. This is what they would like to have happen. So they'd like to have all this stuff back, and I'm pretty sure that what Trump wants to be, or the Trump operatives would like to be, is the Black Pope, the one you don't see, the one that's not on TV. Hence the quote-unquote joke released by the White House, right? Interesting when you look at it this way. So they took the Fortran box, at least the one on top, because they weren't aware that the other 2 were important. And the other 2 kind of remained in place. And they took this box over to the Vatican, did their little rituals on April 21st, hoping to activate the portal, light the fire, whatever they called it. And, nothing really happened, but they figure, let's finish the sequence. So next, location number 3. Location number 3, they went to the very next day. They've been on a world tour. April 22nd was in Shanghai. Shanghai was also connected to yellow, which we have known that before. And it was also connected to Uranus. Wish I'd written down what all the astrologers have told me, because I asked several people what Uranus means in astrology, and I'm sure you can look this up. So they went to Uranus. No, they didn't go to Uranus. So Shanghai is connected to the planet Uranus and the yellow living crystal. So they felt that if they moved the Fortran box over there, they sang some more songs, did some more things, and, were hoping to activate yellow. Nothing really happened, so they continued on with their quest to location number 4, which was on April 23rd. We can talk about this now that their cycle is over, at least this part of it. And they wanted to activate green. Green, we know, is a color associated with the Middle East, and believe it or not, also planet Pluto. How exciting. Where did they go? For this, they had to go to Nepal / the Wesak Valley. Green was also associated with not only the planet Uranus, but green was also associated with the green living crystal, or the tainted green living crystal. Green we also know to be associated with people like Astaroth. We also know green to be associated with disease and illness. Okay. Again, same rituals, same thing. Nothing really happened. That brings us to location number 5. Mambo number 5. Location number 5. Let's see. That's one. Okay. Was Los Angeles. I'm sure some of you have heard about the Los Angeles vortex that's just outside of what we know as LA proper. Los Angeles was tied to Earth as a planet. It was also tied to the orange crystal, which they intended to try to reset this vortex. And here they're doing this whole thing, and we're watching them go around, and and we're like, do you think they know that they're not activating anything? No, but they keep going anyway. And it's always good to keep your enemy busy doing something that they think is important. And it is actually quite entertaining to watch what we call the non-repairable humans dance around in skirts, with crystals in their hands, and make weird chants and do all kinds of black magic things that they think they're doing, but they're really not. It's kind of funny, actually. Okay. Next location, number 6, was on April 25th. And this was in Barcelona. Barcelona was connected to planet Mars. Barcelona was also the amber crystal. These are obviously not in order. The amber crystal, or brown, even though we know Mars to be the red planet. In this particular case, it's not. It was actually connected to this crystal. We know Mars as the planet of war and disruption, but in reality, and we're going to talk a little bit more about these types of things, it is actually the overlay on those crystals where they changed them to colors, connected them to planets, and connected them to locations on Earth. Those changes are actually what made, for example, Mars the planet of war. Originally, Mars was not the planet of war. We know Venus as the love planet. It also became the condemnation planet as well through the course of the things that the non-humans did. So what these people were technically trying to activate was access to the spaces in between. In our last conversation, we talked a lot about cake and how they're looking for access to the frosting. Do they know they will not be able to bleed that into existence? No, they do not. But thus far, to be fair, all simulations occurred in the places in between planes. So, okay, location number, 7. This one was on the 26th of April. Oh, it's 26th, yep. 26th of April, and this would have been blue. And this would have been the city of London. And London was actually connected to Jupiter. We know Jupiter as the planet of luck and changes and positive things happening and manifestation and abundance and all of that. You can take that and reverse that right out, and it became the planet of lack and all kinds of things. So sometimes when we're reading or we go to see an astrologist and they make certain predictions about your life, in a lot of ways, these guys have basically destroyed that, or at least tried to overlay it with these sophons so much to the point that the planet, as a living being itself, could not exert its source given rights, so to speak, or its source given jobs throughout the multiverse. So, location number 8 is Moscow. It was red, tied to the red, artificially red created crystal, and this was connected to Mercury, the planet of communications. Now, see, in the past, when, say, Mercury would be aligned with Moscow, as an example, or goes retrograde, or all of those types of things, this would have caused more of an issue here on Earth, and at one point of time would have activated a living crystal. So they took the Fortran to all these locations thinking they could activate the timeline, a reboot of a timeline, by moving the Fortran timeline management box to all these locations, therefore activating crystals, which had so many overlays and so many AIs connected to them. It was ridiculous. But yet they still thought, they could take charge of all of this stuff. So after Moscow, we had white, number 9, next day, white, which was connected to Frankfurt, Germany. And connected to planet Neptune. Next location they went, number 10, was purple. Purple was tied to Manhattan. And planet Venus. So this was a really interesting location, and I'm going to talk about this one for a second just because of all the things that happened there. So you want to know why they wanted Tom to come there? Because Tom worked with Michael, and so far none of their other box situations had quite worked out the way that they thought that they would. So they figured this time they're going to get a little help. They need some help from probably the right person, because maybe that's why this box is this thing on, they shake it, this thing on, and of course they thought if they had the right person in Manhattan that maybe the box would be activated. Now they know about Tom Melville and his history with the archivists and Michael and those types of beings, and they thought, well, for sure, if Michael was a realm owner, maybe Tom can do something about this. Now Tom never went to Manhattan, so they had to try to get some other people to help, with purple. Needed some help. So they chose people like Trump. They also chose Melania. I can't remember who else, a few generals and whatever. They figured that they had the wrong people moving the box around, and perhaps if they got the right people to move the box around, or put a ring with the box or some kind of thing, that perhaps the ceremony would work out better. Because, really they only got another shot, to do the full activation. So this brings us to the 29th of April. And they really tried a lot of people, and still, no activation, no AI connected to it did they get access to. Didn't get access to the wrong planes of existence. Did not get access to the simulation like they had hoped, and now they're desperate. So one more location, April 30th, the day that I missed the news. They took the box to Chicago. Can't spell today. Lack of sleep. Chicago was gray, or the distorted gray living crystal, and it was connected to the moon. So they gave it a go in Chicago. Nothing really worked out. This is the night also that Langley called Tom and told him not to call me until the next day, and that they were probably going to need to put it off until at least Monday. Now, when they went to all the locations, tried to reboot the timeline, it didn't work. So they came up with a brilliant plan, which they executed on last night. Oh, yeah. This was, if you were experiencing issues yesterday, I'm about to tell you why, because this was crazy bad. Okay, so they go to all the locations. They didn't get their AIs back like they had thought. They figured they would have this by May 1st. You know, they had it in the bag. They came up with a backup plan, and that backup plan was to create a situation where all of humanity was going to die. Now, reasons why a timeline is jumped or a timeline is rebooted sometimes, usually in such a dire situation, a timeline would actually be jumped, meaning they would move to a completely new, different timeline, and memory wipes would happen, or at least partial memory wipes would happen, and history would be rebooted, and they would get some access to something or other because they still believe they are security for planet Earth, and they're not. So this would happen when we were at a point as humans or as Earth at the brink of extinction. So in order to preserve and save the species we know as humanity, a timeline change could be necessary. So they felt if we were on the brink of extinction in all their infinite wisdom, that they could actually forego, if they ever did find out even that there were other folks with other boxes elsewhere, this would trip it all on its own because we were on the verge of extinction. Therefore, we could potentially jump timelines if they made us nearly extinct. Now, how does one make us nearly extinct in about 48 hours? Because they also feel, I don't know where they get their information from, but they also feel that if a timeline is going to be changed or rebooted, that this would have to take place by this Friday coming up, meaning Friday of the week coming up. Why they believe that, I have no idea. Maybe between now and next Friday, I'll be able to tell you, but no one I've asked seems to know, but that's what they feel. They feel they have until that day. Now, as far as we are concerned, reality is stable, and we're going forward, until they created a giant cluster, last night. So they had a few things happen, which led to some more frustration yesterday and also the day before. So on Earth, we're going to start with where we came from here. So on Earth, we know there are these very weird, and I've talked about these machines before, and we have no official name for these machines other than, let's call them DNA blueprint. The original DNA blueprint of the universe, Earth, and the omniverse machines. So the machines, there were 3 actual original ones, and then over time, we actually had an Earth grid of these machines. And each machine contained 2 keystones. Now, these keystones look kind of nondescript. They look very similar to rocks that we would consider, like, if you remember as kids, good skipping rocks. They're kind of flat. These particular ones are a little rough on the surface. They look like they are sandstone almost. And there is one that is of the light and one that is of the dark. Now, when the universe was infiltrated quite a long time ago, billions of years ago in Earth's time, those keystones were swapped out for artificial keystones. So we now have an artificial dark and an artificial light keystone in each one of these machines. So one of the things they did after they went to all the locations, danced around in skirts with crystals and whatnot, they went to these machines and proceeded to steal the rocks. Now, if the council can actually, let's say, understand humanity's motivations as a whole, they certainly can understand the motivations of the deep state. So, before they arrived at this location on, let's call it Thursday night-ish, they went and reprogrammed those stones. So when they tried to send, which they did, send enormous amounts of frequencies to these stones, they actually took the Fortran box, figured it must have run out of batteries, took it back to Israel to try to get charged, stole the stones, and thought that they were going to be able to use the stones to then reboot or change the timelines. And boy, did they try. Now, the mantids came in. Remember, we have our new friends, the helpers, and they've always, been there. But the mantids came in and they reprogrammed the stones where exactly what they were doing would actually alter the artificial reality simulations, break it down faster, along with anything that was left between the planes of existence we know as colors or hulls. So they actually helped us out quite a bit with all of their hacking over a few days, and they were definitely fooled. In the words of the mantids, they call these fool's gold stones. But they were so proud of themselves, saying, we got the rocks, we got the rocks, we got the rocks. Yeah, you guys got the rocks, all right. So you figured out, probably the deep state figured out by Thursday evening or so, that this was not going to work. So the next thing the deep state did was go to Georgia. Now, Georgia, being the state of Georgia in the U.S., and all night last night, about midday yesterday, the alarm started going off as they somehow got information as to what was under there, if they didn't already know, and they decided they were going to basically eliminate all of humanity from this planet. That was the plan. They went to a few places. You'll find this very interesting. The CDC, or the Center for Disease Control, under the Atlanta airport. And Robbins Air Force Base. I think it might be Air Force, I don't know. Robbins military base, let me put it that way to you. So they went to these three locations, and in these three locations was basically the source of disease on planet Earth. I call this time disease. So frequencies are going off, everything is going nuts. People are starting to feel sick. They're having weird colds. They're trying to connect to things like the vaccinated folks and all kinds of things. And they really didn't get this up and running until almost, I would say, about 1:45 my time yesterday. So that would be mountain time. And this little trifecta here of locations started emitting awful disease and frequencies for everything you could possibly imagine that is a human disease from the past, present, or future. And they were quite proud of what they were doing. Not only that, the secret space program main persons, or what they've deemed are their main leaders, also tried to escape this planet by utilizing old jump rooms that they felt that they should be able to access at this point. And they left people like Langley Five and Langley and other folks in charge of the what we call the poop show after things looked and appeared that they were going to work, so that they wouldn't be involved in these types of things. They told all of the people that they left here to manage the extinction of humanity. I know, great people, huh? To manage the extinction of humanity, to go to these particular places where they said that they would be safe, which was completely and totally a lie. Now, I know that these people will never want to admit that, but that is actually what happened. So we actually intercepted those jump rooms because they were planning on going to some of these corridors that went, say, between the moon and Mars. There was a corridor that connected the two, and then it went from Mars to the Orion Nebula. Also, definitely a connection to Andromeda. A few other locations. We had other ones that went from Earth to Jupiter, which also went to Andromeda. Now, in Andromeda, there's what the mantids refer to as an Elysium, which is kind of like the word means paradise. Apparently, there's some movie or something about it as well. So there was an artificial environment, biospheres, if you will, sophons, I should say, where they could live and exist until it was safe for them to come back and, of course, rule planet Earth. They also had intentions of becoming, quote unquote, the gods of Earth in this location. And they promised everybody here that they would be in touch with them, once they arrived. And of course, they never actually arrived. To Andromeda, they were intercepted, and they are now stuck in photons that look like balloons with strings to their respective jump rooms. They are not here. They are not there. They are actually nowhere, really. They will not be calling the deep state and giving them some advisement from the land of the gods here in Andromeda. No, 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 they won't. They're stuck there. And in the words of Source, I said, well, what are we supposed to do with these things? What are we supposed to do with these people? And he said, we'll deal with it in a century or so. So there they sit, and there they will remain in accordance with Source. So, needless to say, over the last few days, there's been a lot of cleaning that has taken place, and the restoration of the crown of glory and the cleaning of the stones has commenced. We have all agreed there isn't going to be a timeline extension, timeline reboot, no matter how many times the deep state runs around with crystals and rocks and everything else. Connections and overlays to planets in astrology, where, if they say one planet is the planet of luck, it will now be the planet of luck because it will be connected to the living crystals. Same thing goes for the sun and the moon. They're no longer omnious things. There were definitely connections between these various colored stones and various astrological constellations that we know, like Aries and Libra, that would dictate your life path. Now you can kind of understand how that all worked and could be manipulated. I mean, they even messed with fate and your destiny based on when you were born and where the planets were when you were born, and all kinds of different things. When you think about the amount of havoc that they have wreaked on humans over the years, or millions of years, if not billions of years, you can kind of get a general understanding that just how powerful you really are. Source is not afraid of that because Source knows that all of your wisdom, your strength, and your power and your love comes from Source. Without Source, you don't exist. Without Source, I can't do my job either. My job is to uh, work in a way that is congruent to the wishes of Source. If I am doing something that is against Source, it doesn't work. My abilities to do things does not work, and I've not tried that, and I'm not about to try it, but I am humble enough to understand that fact. And humanity will one day too, as they go to do things like manifest and change things. But as for the deep state, we will not be extinct anytime in the near future. As far as I know, we haven't seen yet another site like this where they could possibly try. At this moment, there are a lot less of them. They actually gave us permission due to the fact that they were attacking us physically. And were going to kill us to dig deep into the archives of a system that we took over quite a while back. We actually took it over during the alpha days when we were still using the alpha system, and then that carried over to the Golden Age AI when we replaced it, which was the kill switches tied to the SSP. Now, not all secret space program operatives have the Marduk kill switch, depending on what level they were on and how they participated, but a lot of them did. And we made full use of that kill switch last night to the tune of almost 9,000 people on their side. Should this continue, we will continue going on down the line and go past the SSP and continue on to others that have taken an oath to the Order of the Black Sun and other deep state members and various societies that also have received a chip in their head. And you know exactly what I'm talking about, deep state people. We have no problem with continuing on this path if you continue to try to make humanity extinct so that you can get your way and actually have some power. Also, bad news for the deep state, you won't be hearing from the morons that are in photons until Source decides they're not going to be. That day is not today, and it's not within the next week, and it's not within the next few years. So good luck trying to get in touch with these folks, but it's definitely not going to happen. And unfortunately, they never reach their destination, and that destination and Andromeda no longer exists. So goodbye, Elysium. And hello, a new life for humanity and Source. So the council feels very positive about the stability of Earth herself. We have also been taking countermeasures, as they have as well. Like I said, we have a lot of help in stabilizing Earth until she can stabilize herself, kind of like humans as well. Where we are stabilizing humans, so until humans can learn to stabilize themselves. And as far as I know, everything is kind of smooth sailing. It's still, the deep state's not very happy, and they're not happy with me, and that's okay. They can be unhappy people with me. It's fine. I don't mind. I also have your kill switch, so there you go. So go ahead and try us. And we've already proven in the last couple of days that we've already done this, and we can continue on down the line until we run out of chipped people. On that note, that was a really long GIA report for you. We had a lot to talk about because we haven't talked in a few days, and I'm looking forward to hopefully no issues on Monday, and we'll have another chat then.